In 2007, after over 100 million people voted, the new 7 wonders of the world were revealed. The winners were the Great Wall of China, the city of Petra in Jordan, the Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro, Machu Picchu in Peru, Mexico's Chichen Itza, the Colosseum in Rome, and India's Taj Mahal. Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza was given honorary status, as it's the only surviving wonder from the original 7 wonders of the ancient world list. Plus, Egyptian officials said that it would be a disgrace for them to have to compete for a spot. While we love the Pyramid of Giza, we believe that there are some landmarks out there that also deserve the number 8 spot. Stay tuned until the end to see a German castle that looks like it came out of a storybook. Before we jump into it, make sure to like this video, subscribe to The Richest, and join our notification squad. Now here are 5 landmarks that deserve to be called the 8th wonder of the world. The Golden Bridge. Located in Vietnam's Ba Na Hills, the Golden Bridge has been wowing tourists from around the world ever since it opened in June 2018. This 490-foot-long pedestrian bridge was created to help connect a cable car station in the area to the Tian Tai Garden. Before the bridge's construction, the steep difference in height between the 2 locations was an inconvenience for those who flocked to the area. But the bridge was also created to provide a scenic view and to serve as a tourist attraction in itself. Its beautiful design includes 2 giant stone hands that were made to look as if they're supporting the golden structure. According to the company that designed the bridge, TA Landscape Architecture, the themes of the design revolve around gods, humans, and nature. Their website says that gods are often thought to be supernatural forces in human form, leading us to deduce that the gigantic hands are supposed to be godlike. It also looks like the bridge is being pulled out of the mountain, almost as if it were a gift from nature. The fog in the area is said to help promote that imagery as well. One could even say that this bridge looks like a path between the heavens and earth. A tourist who was lucky enough to experience the bridge for himself likened walking across it to walking on clouds. And at 3,280 feet above sea level, it certainly does provide a breathtaking view from way up in the sky. Another tourist was quoted saying, after visiting the bridge, "It makes me feel like humans can do anything." We can't remember the last time that a tourist attraction has made us feel that way. Thus why the Golden Bridge deserves to be the 8th wonder of the world. Easter Island Heads. The Moai, also known as the Easter Island Heads, are monolithic human figures located on Easter Island, which can be found on the east edge of the Polynesian Triangle. They were carved by the Rapa Nui people between the years 1250 and 1500 AD. No one really knows why the Rapa Nui undertook such a task, but it's suspected that these figures were carved in honor of their ancestors, chiefs, and other important people. The statues also seem to be purposely placed to face towards the village, making it appear that they were put there specifically to watch over the ancient civilization that created them. Yet there are 7 Moai that face out to sea, which are believed to have been placed that way to help travelers find the island. Today, people from all around the world flock to Easter Island to visit its nearly 1,000 monumental statues. The island was even named a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1995. While the remote Chilean island still has a population of nearly 8,000 people, it receives over 100,000 visitors each year. Almost all of the Moai have oversized heads that are 3/8 the size of the whole statue. We all thought that these sculptures were nothing more than giant heads for the longest time, but archaeologists recently revealed that the heads are attached to bodies that are buried underground. Hagia Sophia. The Hagia Sophia is a former church and a former mosque. But in 1935, the Hagia Sophia was converted into a museum wherein both Christian and Muslim art could be admired. Not only does the museum's website boast that it's one of the most visited museums in the world, but it also says that the building had been called the 8th wonder of the world as far back as the 6th century. Located in Istanbul, Turkey, millions of people visit the Hagia Sophia Museum each year. At the completion of its construction, it was thought to be the world's largest building and was an engineering marvel of its time. However, the building that you see today is not the original one. Originally built as a basilica for the Greek Orthodox Christian Church, the first Hagia Sophia had a wooden roof. During riots that occurred in the area back in 404 AD, the structure was burned to the ground. The Hagia Sophia was completely rebuilt by 415 AD, still with a wooden roof. A little more than a century later, the building burnt down again during a revolution against the emperor. This time, the damage was irreparable and the structure had to be demolished. The third Hagia Sophia was completed in 537 AD, which is the structure that you can visit in Istanbul today. When it was still a church, the Hagia Sophia was the place in which new emperors were crowned. In fact, it served a pivotal role in Byzantine culture and politics for a good part of its first 900 years. When the Hagia Sophia was taken over by the Ottomans, renovations were done to turn it into a mosque. Many of the original Orthodox-themed mosaics were covered with Islamic calligraphy. A group of Turkish people today have even been fighting to have the museum turned back into a practicing mosque. They feel that the Hagia Sophia is a relic of their ancestors and a symbol of their freedom. As you can imagine, their campaign has stirred up a bunch of controversy. Kremlin and the Red Square. Together, the Kremlin and Red Square make up one of the most iconic places in Moscow, Russia. In fact, just by showing you a photo of these colorful domes right now, you probably know exactly what we're talking about. The domes actually belong to St. Basil's Cathedral, which sits on Red Square below the ramparts of the Kremlin. Earning their UNESCO World Heritage status in 1990, these sites are associated with many major events in Russian history. Red Square is exactly what it sounds like, an open square that separates the Kremlin from a historic merchant quarter. Contrary to popular belief, the square's name has nothing to do with the country's communist past. Back in the 1600s, the area was a top spot for high-profile executions. In the 20th century, the Red Square was most famous for being the site of official Soviet military parades. Stalin even had a cathedral and the square's gateway taken down to make room for heavy military vehicles to pass through during parades and demonstrations. Thankfully, those historic monuments were both rebuilt after the fall of the Soviet Union. Home to some of Russia's most important landmarks, the Red Square has been a public marketplace and a meeting place for centuries. Besides housing the St. Basil's Cathedral, which we showed you earlier, the square is also home to the State Historical Museum, the GUM department store, and Vladimir Lenin's mausoleum. As for the Kremlin, there are many different Kremlins around Russia, but the one located right off of Red Square is the most popular one. Originally built in 1156, the Kremlin's existing walls and towers were then added in the 1400s. Since then, the building has served as a residence for the Tsar, as the official residence of the president, and a museum. The Kremlin is often used to refer to Russia's government, as it is essentially the seat of the Russian government. Due to the Red Square housing some of the most iconic landmarks and the Kremlin's political prowess, the Kremlin and Red Square would be a fine contender for the eighth wonder of the world. Neuschwanstein Castle. We're not into picking favorites, but just look at how gorgeous the Neuschwanstein Castle is. It looks like a building that came straight out of a fairy tale. Located in Bavaria, Germany, the castle was commissioned by King Ludwig II as a personal retreat and to pay homage to Richard Wagner. Instead of using public funds to pay for this masterpiece, Ludwig used his personal fortune to finance the construction between 1869 and 1886. Though the castle was only completed in 1892, the king passed away in 1886 and left behind substantial debts. In order to pay off the debts and finish the construction, the castle was opened to the public as a museum. While the king initially estimated that the castle would take 3 years to build, he never even lived to see it fully completed. It took 26 years for it to be officially done. This castle is such a sight to behold that Walt Disney even based the iconic Disney Castle after it. Still open to the public today, the Neuschwanstein is one of the most popular castles in Europe. It welcomes more than 1.3 million people each year. As mentioned earlier, the castle was supposed to be the king's retreat from the public. So we can imagine that he's probably turning in his grave over the fact that it ended up turning into a huge tourist attraction. Nestled between the Bavarian Alps, this dream building was constructed in a style of old German knights' castles. While the whole story behind this castle's conception seems innocent enough, we have to mention the political reason for building it. After losing a war against Prussia in 1866, Bavaria was forced to accept a defensive and offensive alliance. Part of this agreement was that they had to remove the king's right to command the army in case of war. This meant that Ludwig II was no longer a sovereign ruler, so he began to build an array of castles, like Neuschwanstein, so that he could rule over them instead. Pretty sad, isn't it? but he will now forever be known for leaving behind one of the most magnificent pieces of architecture in the world, one that's definitely worthy of being the world's 8th wonder. That's all for the 5 landmarks we think deserve to be called the 8th wonder of the world. If it was up to you, which landmark would you choose as the 8th world wonder? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.